Welcome to Mediumship Matters, the podcast dedicated to spiritual growth, connection, and the reality of working with spirit. This season is proudly sponsored by Spirit Social, the brand new online community for the spiritually curious. It's a space where you can connect, share experiences, and access exclusive content without the noise of mainstream social media. With live events, expert insights, and a supportive community, Spirit Social is the place to deepen your journey. Take part in the free 6-month trial by visiting spiritsocial.co or downloading the app from the App Store now. Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah Macintyre. And I'm really excited to be kicking off season 7's interviews today, chatting to medical intuitive, spiritual intuitive, Katie Beecher. Hi, Katie. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm really, really excited to talk to you because you've had a bumpy ride, haven't you, girl, to get you to
A
this
little
place.
bit. Yeah.
And I can tell from your website and obviously your book that you've written that we'll delve into with more detail that you're quite open about the experiences and the journey that you've been on. So I already know this is going to be a good one. So let's start with what you actually do. Tell everybody what you offer, what a medical and spiritual intuitive is.
Sure. So in addition to being a medical intuitive, I'm also a licensed counselor. So that helps with some of the, clinical information that I deal with. But the way that I work to do my readings is with just a name and an age. I create a 4-page, really extensive report for my clients. And it's basically everything about their life currently and in the past that influences health and wellness in any way, positively or negatively, right? And childhood trauma and career and you name it, and it's there. And then I create an intuitive soul painting, also using watercolor. And it's a symbolic way of relaying information to people. And so that's fun. People really like them. And those get sent before we meet. So during our meeting, we discuss all of the information I've sent, as much as we have time for, and any questions and any issues that are not there that people want to talk about. And we get more information from my guides during that time. And, the goal being people leaving with at least the start of a plan to resolve, heal the issues that they have going on, and a lot of other surprises that come up along the way sometimes.
I love it. I love it. And so how did this journey start for you? Like were you always intuitive? Did spirit find you along the way? How did that happen?
I don't have a lot of memories from being really young, but I do clearly have times when I heard a voice. It was a friendly, loving voice, but it was very much guidance. And, especially when I was stressed or when things were going on with my parents or whatever, I knew that I wasn't alone because I had that. I didn't necessarily feel very supported in my family, but I knew I had. And then along the way, I started picking up negative spirits and negative energy, which was really scary. And it made me turn away or try to turn away from my abilities. It doesn't work that way, right? They're there. And then I really started exploring all this when I finally got help for an eating disorder. I was 16, so not finally, but when I got help for an eating disorder, was hooked up with a Jungian therapist, and Jung is very into spiritual stuff and intuition and totally open to astrology and stuff even. So through that healing process, I got to know my intuition, learned more about my abilities, and then became a licensed counselor and worked really intuitively with my clients. And then sort of accidentally started channeling people's relatives who had passed, because I'm medium too. Yeah, that was great. And just realized I can't push this stuff down. It's part of me and I need to explore and, build my abilities. So it was kind of learning more about myself all along the way.
I love it. And so when you ended up with the Jungian therapist and you were Do you think that was divinely guided to have such a unique approach to therapy and to work with you in that way?
Absolutely. And I've told this story before. The whole thing was divine intervention because what 16-year-old, calls their pediatrician without telling anybody else, including their parents, and then goes to therapy, again, without telling anybody, that was divine intervention right there.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that finding a spiritual type of therapist, I absolutely believe it's the only way I could have recovered. I need
Mhm.
more than behavior modification, more than, and all those things have their place. But for me, and for so many of the eating disordered and, addiction and other clients I've worked with, it really, much of the core stuff stems from not loving and accepting yourself and not having any connection to intuition, a higher voice, something like that. So I really believe it's incredibly hard to be really healthy emotionally and spiritually and physically without those things.
Mhm. Amazing. And so how did that unfold from you? Because 16 is still very, very young. My daughter's going to be 16 in a couple of weeks. So you're still so vulnerable at that age, aren't you? So how was it to have all of those spiritual experiences you've been having validated when you must have felt so lost and alone before that?
I have to say it was magical. um,
Mm.
I'm so, as horrible as it was, don't get me wrong, as horrible as it was to have an eating disorder where I was throwing up 3 times a day.
Mm.
um, I'm so grateful for that experience because unless people are in pain, sometimes there's not a lot of motivation to make changes. And I
Mhm.
need that pain to start to set boundaries, to start, like I said, love and accept myself, not be so hard on myself. Um, so, yeah, it was, I guess I didn't really think about it because it was divine intervention about,
Yeah.
how hard it was. But I know that I had never told anybody about it before. I couldn't have gotten help until I was ready, and it just, I felt like, where has this been all my life? Somebody to actually talk to, to validate my experiences and encourage them.
Amazing. So you're 16 years old. You are working with your Jungian therapist, psychiatrist, and you're working through all that processing stuff like that. And then obviously you heal, you get well, you keep your unfoldment going. What happened between then and you setting up as an intuitive and doing it? Because that must have been a journey too.
It was, I mean, I started, I became a therapist 35 years ago, which is so much. Um, so it definitely wasn't unfolding. But like I said, I always just let my intuition guide me in sessions. And I found that I knew things without them telling me, even about their body, even about, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world and also the weirdest because I was like, I didn't know that I could do all this, um, even when I tried medical intuition for the first time, like in a class type thing. Um, I had no idea what I was able to do or what I could see or what I could feel. So yeah, it kind of, it evolved medically too. I've always been interested in medicine and probably would have gone to medical school had it not been for the eating disorder. But my mom got really sick and I ended up being her caretaker for a while, and just she wasn't really very verbal for some of the time. And so just picking up her stuff and
Mhm.
being able to talk to doctors about it and stuff was kind of like, maybe I should do this, more of this, or incorporate this into the work that I do. Because I was like, this is really useful stuff.
Amazing. So is that what happened? Did you feel like it was more like a sliding incorporation rather than a big leap into, hey, I'm here, I'm a medical intuitive. How did you navigate that change?
Yeah. Some of it was when my mom got sick. as it happens in a lot of families, there was a lot of discourse. There was a lot of it was horrible. Take a
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional family and throw some money and injury, illness into it and blows up. That needed to happen because I needed to get away from those people. But it also sort of made me say, you know what? Screw this. I don't care what people think anymore. They're the only ones who criticized what I did anyway. Who cares? And so it was just sort of like, I'm learning more about this. I can do it. I'm going to start practicing on friends and family till I feel good enough about actually, I guess, bringing it out into the open. But yeah, it's amazing. I don't know that I would have done this had my mom not gotten sick too.
So when we're in it, it's so hard, isn't it? And you don't want to be the person that says to people, you will weather this storm and you'll be grateful for it one day. But once you've weathered a few storms, you know that there is always some purpose. It's never wasted, is it? It always gets you where you need to be. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
it's so
So
true.
you incorporate Jungian psychology into your practice.
Mhm.
How do these principles complement your intuitive work, and how do they aid in the healing process?
In so many ways. And I love it because it helped me heal, right? So I'm an actual user of Jungian psychology. And I've gotten a lot of training in it. And a lot of what he taught about um, is what brought on like Hay House and all of these people now who are talking about symbolism and the meaning of your symptoms and all the things that are getting more mainstream. That was him.
Mhm.
It was him and the other people like him. So they're the people now like Body Keeps the Score, like that's all Jungian stuff. It's not, new.
Yeah.
So I love that it's, being used more and accepted more and people are learning more about it. It's awesome. Um, so some of it is the way that I teach what intuition is, how to connect to the body, how to connect to intuition. Um, Talking to your symptoms is another great thing that he would have advocated for. Having a written dialogue with your intuition, all Jungian stuff. Even the paintings that I do, because he was so symbolic and he was so into symbolism and mythology and things like that. And the paintings are just a symbolic way of, communicating with people.
Mhm.
Um, it's great because it immediately goes to your guides and your unconscious. So it bypasses the, human part who would judge words. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, so many things that I
And
do.
it must be lovely for people because it's something tangible. Yeah, in so much mediumship and spirituality, it's, etheric, isn't it? It's here, it's gone. And so to be able to have something that you can touch, that you can hold, that you can refer back to, that you can look
Exactly.
at again, that must be really amazing for people.
People really like it, and it's unusual, for
Yeah.
someone to send a report on a painting like that, especially not knowing anything about the person at all. So maybe it was, my background as a teacher or whatever, but I wanted to show that number one, this is real. I can't BS a report. I can't change it once I've sent it to you. It's there. So there's that validation.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I like seeing things in writing. I thought maybe people won't have to take so many notes, but yeah, but it's working. So
I love it. And I've obviously stalked your website and I've seen some examples that are on there and they're absolutely fascinating. Some of them are quite tribal looking, aren't they?
yes, yes, for sure, for
I
sure.
love it. I love it. And of course, as I can see from behind you, you have written a book as well. Tell us about Heal from Within.
I knew when I was going through my recovery, when I was a teenager, I kept hearing, you're going to do something important with this. It wasn't for nothing, it's okay. And they showed me I'd be writing a book and have a pretty big audience and all the things. And the founding principle of it is what my guides told me so long ago, that with intuition, connection to unconditional love and self
Mm.
acceptance, you can heal from just about anything. And so that's the whole premise of it. And I tell my story of healing from eating disorder, Lyme, all the things, dysfunctional family trauma. And then I take people through how to connect to their intuition, there's quizzes and all this stuff about identifying what you need to work on, maybe where to start. And then I take people through how to do their own medical intuitive reading. There's charts in there and all kinds of things. But it goes chakra by chakra. And not because I'm trying to heal the chakra necessarily, but for me, that assures that I go through the whole entire body, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And so it's kind of nice to have it divided into little units that you can address. And then in the back, there's, a glossary of conditions and tips and things like that for addressing them.
Amazing. And I mean, there's quite a vulnerability writing a book, putting your words out there. They are, again, like you were saying with the readings, they're sent. Once they're sent, there's nothing you can do. Once your book is published, it's out there for people to look at. And especially for you, because you are so honest about where you've been and your journey. Like, what was that like, sharing that with, faceless people around the world? That's a big thing.
It's so true. I've always been open. So I long ago stopped caring about what people think of me, and I have to say, other than some born again Christian people who think that any spirituality whatsoever is evil and linked to Satan, the only people who ever were nasty or, critical or whatever were members of my family, people that I was related to with DNA, not my husband and my kids. They're amazing. So to me, it just like reiterated the fact that these people don't matter. And you grow a very thick skin in dysfunctional families, often. And you can choose to succumb, or you can choose to say, no, I'm going to be me. And I'm not going to let you stop me. So not that it was easy. I didn't feel like I was a natural writer. So it was really nice to have an editor.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. Yes.
And it was overwhelming because it was so much in my head. There's almost 60 years of stuff in this head. And with ADD and stuff, it's like, how do I organize this? Where do I start? What do I put in? So I found it a bit overwhelming.
I get that as well, because I think when you live it and you're immersed in it, you forget what you know and what you don't know. Like what people don't know. And it's very hard sometimes, isn't it, to cover. When I wrote my book, my editors were going, but you haven't covered the basics. You've gone straight in. And I'd go, oh, because you're kind of so far gone in what you know and how you work and everything that's going on. It can be really hard to take it back, can't it, to that level?
Yeah. And also just some of the things, I don't know. I also kind of, in some ways, got bored along the way, because it was like, okay, you want this detail, you want that detail. And I get it, but like, I'm also not particularly enjoying writing this. I'll admit, I'm very grateful, so grateful for all the stuff along the way, my agent and the, like, not dismissing that, but it was just sort of like, can I go to the beach now or go do something?
You do get so bored with your own voice, don't you? Your own book. You are like, I mean, when I published mine, I was just, I don't even know if anyone's going to like it, because you're so into it, like the nitty gritty. Over it.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I don't, like, people ask me what it's about, and it's kind of funny that I have trouble describing it sometimes, because I didn't write it. Like, I let my guides, that,
yes.
Your guides, right? And so I'm like, I don't actually remember a lot of this. It's amusing.
I love it. I love the color as well, which actually matches my nail varnish. That wasn't intentional, but it's very exciting seeing it behind you there. So you've obviously had your work featured in some big platforms like Goop and things like that. How has that impacted your practice, but also, being so, again, widely available out there?
Such a blessing, such a blessing. Unfortunately, Goop changed the way that they formatted their whole entire site. So now it's more, sales and articles and stuff like that, which is sad and unfortunate for me and other people. But having that exposure, is everything. And it's really hard to get it, like really hard. When I pitched to them, they were sort of new and they were kind of like, oh, this is neat. But it's super hard, as to get prep. And it's getting harder with social media kind of going downhill, and it's really challenging. So I'm very grateful for your invitation on the podcast.
Right? I'm glad you came.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it actually, it really helped my business a lot. And I didn't get a lot, any like weird feedback other from my family, but that's okay.
Good. It's fascinating, isn't it? So, because energetically you're exposed, I want a better word than that, but you know what I mean. There's so many platforms, there's so many versions of you immortalized out there at different times. So obviously you've gone and you've started doing your readings, you're working, you're still doing your counseling clients, you're all of these different things that you're working on. How has your process evolved? How has your connection changed?
That's a really great question. That I start off with a blank template, but it's basically goes down through the chakras and it lists the emotional and physical, spiritual characteristics of each chakra, because most people don't have any idea, so I wanted to give people that information. And so my template has changed and my process has changed. The template is more specific. And I was making so much more work for myself than I needed to. So you kind of learn to, streamline and become more efficient. But I also, for the past, I don't even know how many years, I start the reading with an oracle card draw. And nice. I didn't do that before, but I found that it kind of gets me into a different headspace and gets me starting to focus in on the person that I'm reading. So that's a nice tool. And yeah, just the longer I practiced this, even going back, I realized that I had a lot more clairs, if you will, and I just allow more stuff. And even loved ones in spirit come in and give input in the reading too. So amazing. Yeah, the more people open up and try, the more they'll like realize that they have abilities, and it's really surprising. So for people listening, like just try psychometry, pick up an object and see what you think about it, or allow yourself to physically feel things too, or just because I get information in like every way you can think of at this point.
Yeah, I can imagine. You're just like a massive channel for all the energy in all. I love it. I love it. So you've done some workshops, haven't you, at venues like the Amiga Institute and stuff like that. What do you like to teach in those spaces? And have you got any more lined up at the moment?
Unfortunately, I do not have any lined up at the moment. Again, really hard to get into those things, right? And I did mine during the middle of COVID or the end of COVID, and there were like vaccine requirements and not before my book came out. So, but anyway, still got decent attendance. But what I like to do with people is hands-on things. So, take them through how to connect to their intuition. I love to do art therapy, and whether it's people creating their own intuitive soul paintings, or we did a really fun exercise where people had life-size tracings of a body. And then the mission was basically color it in, get things from outside, bring in other objects, do it whatever you want, alter it any way you want. And then I went around and interpreted them for people individually. So they learned so much and they got immersed in that process. And, I encouraged them to connect their guides and intuition while they were doing it. But I don't like to sit for long periods of time. So I would prefer to be involved in something and actually learn by doing. So that's what I try to pass on.
I find if people tell me things, I forget. I've got a brain like a sieve. I need to do it to integrate it, or it's gone. Yeah, I totally agree. So I know you can't disclose personal details, but can you share some client experiences with the listeners where your intuitive insight led to significant change or understandings for their healing?
Yeah, for sure. I one client comes to mind who had really, really severe Lyme in bed. When she contacted me, she wasn't sure which Lyme strains she had or what other conditions were underlying it or what emotional stuff was contributing to. So we worked a lot with that, but she was literally in bed, and when I guided her to some other treatments, I cannot diagnose, I cannot treat, it's not legal, right?
Yeah.
But I steered her to practitioners that had helped me in different methodologies and all the other kinds of work. She is fully recovered. She has her own chiropractic business. She runs, so that's just one of so many. And people who they come to me for issues, and then the guides reveal, you know what, there's really serious issues in your relationship or your marriage, or you're not setting boundaries, you're not your authentic self, all these things. And when they start to do that slowly in a guided way, their health gets better. So it's kind of awesome.
I love it. And I've seen that in I used to, when I first started, I used to do card readings with Reiki at the same time. And that was very much sort of like cracking open a walnut. Like, this is what you need to do because spirit won't do it for you, will they? And you have to let energy boundaries are so important, aren't they? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's just you meet people, they're like a sieve. It's just pouring out of them, and they're saying, "I'm so tired, I'm so tired," and they've got nothing left, and it's shocking. So, could you give the listeners a tip or two for controlling their energy, for stopping those, for activating boundaries?
Absolutely. When I was really young, I was pretty porous, had no idea how to set these boundaries. So, thank you, eating disorder. And one thing I learned is no entities, energy, whatever, can come into you without your permission.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're in an altered state from drugs or alcohol or mental illness, or unless you choose to be involved in negativity. So once I learned that love is always more powerful than evil or negativity, and that my body is mine to control, my energy field is mine to control, just taking that ownership was a big step, and choosing not to let evil and negativity change you. So their weapon is basically like fear, and
Mm-hmm.
the opposite of love. So if you question, really analyze, like, what are your anxieties? What are you anxious about? What things do you hate? Why? What do you love? And why? Like, if you really start to question that and just say, evil's not going to win, I'm sorry, there's so much personal choice in it, and we are empowered, right? And then, other boundaries too, like, people are going to get angry with you when you start setting limits and saying no and stop letting them take advantage of you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of the process.
Yeah.
It's okay. And the people who care about you will still be there. So I guess the bottom line of all that is give yourself permission to control your energy and to have a huge say in how people treat you.
Yes. And also, it's quite interesting because twice you've mentioned now talking to it, like acknowledging it. Because I think a lot of people with anxiety and that fear, they're trying to turn away from it the whole time. So they're not sitting with what it actually is. Like, what am I afraid of? They're just feeling the feelings.
Yeah, and anxiety is not a negative thing. It doesn't feel good, but it's primal. We need an adrenaline response. We need that cortisol we did to run away from saber-tooth tigers or whatever we're doing, right? But like, it's important. It warns you if you're in danger. It warns you if other people are treating you badly and you need to make a change. It
Mhm.
warns you if you're not being true to yourself. So it's not a bad thing. It's a survival mechanism, and addressing it is going to help. Pushing it down is going to make it grow. You know, um, there are times when we're anxious because it's other people's energy we're picking up.
Yeah.
And so if you don't, I really advocate like talking to your symptoms as friends and making them part of your healing team. And then they'll tell you what you need to do. They'll tell you how to heal. They'll, um, but there's this, you have to fight things and this is bad. And that's not, I don't think that's a helpful approach.
I completely agree. And I mean, there's a lot of that in our spiritual community, isn't there? Like, only think the good thoughts, sort of gaslight yourself out of this negative space. So I have to say, Katie, it's really lovely to hear somebody who does the work you do saying to people, acknowledge it, be with it, and take the negativity out of it. Don't judge it. Be with it. It's fascinating. I love it. So, what about you must come across skeptics in your line of work, especially with your big reach and all of these people everywhere. How do you handle that? How do you take it?
I don't really, I don't really blame them if I'm being honest. Excuse me. I can't explain how I do this. I can't explain how my reports and stuff are so accurate. It kind of comes through me. So if I heard about somebody like me and didn't know the work I do, I'd be like, yeah, right. That's hysterical. So that's part of why it's so important for me to use the process that I use, that, there's so many personal things on this report and they're not online. There's nowhere I could have looked them up. There's no, like, this is stuff people have never told anybody sometimes. So the best way I have to combat that is to be like, here you go, here's the evidence or whatever. Most of the people who contact me they may have some skepticism, and then they get the report and they're like, oh, wait a minute, how have you known me for all these years? But there's always gonna be people who,
Yeah.
and and like I said, I don't necessarily blame them.
No, no, I think that's fair. I love that. I love your approach to that. So, what's next for you, Katie? Because you've achieved amazing things. You've got your beautiful
Aw,
book. You're doing all your reading. Where are you focusing your energy for growth next?
that's a tough one. in this economy, and some of the
Mhm.
climate, and it's a bit of a struggle trying to figure out what to do next. And I've learned that if I push too far and I push my agenda and my expectations, and fear goes into all that, that I just get in my own way. So
Same girl.
right. So I'm trying to do what I teach others, which is, hello, spirit, you're a loving part of my life. Please come in and help me. I'm not like, you don't give up your control, but just be like, all right, let me know what I can do. Give me some new ideas, give me some connections, something, because when you have your own business, no matter what it is, it's challenging. And I keep like reminding myself, even Coca-Cola has to keep advertising.
Yeah.
So, right. And it's everybody knows that name. So yeah, I'd love to get to do some more workshops. Maybe, I don't know. I'm leaving things
You're
open.
letting, yeah, seeing where they take you next. There's definitely big energy when you talk about your workshops. You've definitely got a big energy there. So I have no doubt they're gonna move you like a chess piece. That's always how I feel, across the board to
Love
where
it.
they want you next. Yeah, I love it. So last question for you here then. What guidance would you give to somebody that's listening and is wanting to tap into their intuition? I know that they can pop over to your website and you've got a intuition guidebook they can download, but in the meantime, what would you tell them?
I think start with patience and um, and giving yourself a break and letting go of the perfectionism and letting go of the what if I'm wrong? What will people think? Um, I get nervous before I do every report because I care so much and I
Yeah.
want it to be accurate. And but I've learned, like, to let the information come in. Try really hard not to judge it or interpret it. Like, super quick story, had a 12-year-old girl and I heard teeth enamel. My humanness would have been like, she has a lot of cavities. Her mom, when she read the report, said she has extraordinarily strong tooth enamel and has never had a cavity. So let the information come in without judgment. If it's for you or if you're wanting to work with other people, just present it. You can sort it out. Maybe it has to do with somebody that they know or a loved one or in the past or whatever, but it's really scary to put yourself out there.
Yes.
It's really scary. And so what was helpful to me is I joined a mediumship circle through a spiritualist church and, to get support, but try not to judge it. Let the information come in, see where it takes you, and and be open. And if your intuition feels like fear, then listen to that and explore that. Everything that comes through is potentially valuable.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Katie. I did say last question. The last one is easy. Where can people find you?
KatieBeecher.com is the easiest thing. My website. I'm on Instagram, Katie Beecher Medical Intuitive, and Facebook and all the places. But yeah, my website's probably the most central, and you can get to everything from there.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's a lovely website. Very much like it.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
thank you so much for chatting to us. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and I can't wait to see where you go next.
Oh, it was absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me.